Overwatch is a very specific toxic culture that I'm not seeing the rest of the community talk about. And with the recent patch buffing health across the board and vastly changing the way many of these characters are played, I'm seeing some of the people that tout themselves as the most empathetic being the least empathetic across the board. Overwatch is a culture. Gaming has a culture behind it. Every single game has a culture behind it. And I don't know, and I feel like this might be a Blizzard thing, where the culture inside Blizzard is so terrible that it's bleeding out to the rest of the people that attach themselves to Blizzard's game. There are a lot of streamers, a lot of content creators, a lot of people that I'm seeing that are fighting against people who are irritated that their heroes are changing. If that is you, you're the asshole. It doesn't matter whether or not the changes are good or bad for Overwatch. It's the exact same concept as an area having a culture of people that are used to doing things in a very specific way, and then a new culture of people coming in, essentially pushing the rest of them out with power. This is what these patch notes do. They push the old community out with power, and they tell them, no, this is just the better way of doing things. One thing we don't realize is that most of these changes that Blizzard has introduced to the community were discovered by the community. I'm going to use 222 as an excellent example of this, and the reduction to 122 is just a variation on 222 being the thing that the community preferred and found the most impactful across all of their games. We can't forget that Overwatch at one time was open queue, and the question is, who figured out that it probably not the best game in open queue? The community did. So across the board, and I'm going to call a lot of people too, not by name, but I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, this is good for everyone. These changes are good. I can't believe there's people whining about the way that their hero and the way that their players were changed. Well, what's happening is you're actually taking advantage of the existing crowd, the existing culture. You're injecting a small little bit of extra culture into the community that is Overwatch, whatever they're building, whatever people are working on, and telling them, you must now do everything the way that we want you to do it. I see this in all layers of the Overwatch community, and I even see this in layers inside Blizzard's company. That's one of the reasons why I believe that this is a culture that stems from how Blizzard is structured, how Blizzard does their game design. Because we've seen this in the past with Bobby Kotick and the PvE, where Bobby Kotick, or at least the developers inside Blizzard, want to create a game. They see a direction for the game. They start building in that direction. And somebody else with a slightly different idea about how things are to be managed comes in and just gets rid of everything that everybody's done. And yes, I am complaining from a little bit of a perspective of somebody who spends a lot of time in the workshop, in the Overwatch workshop, and working with people who spend a lot more time than me in the Overwatch workshop. This reminds me very much of like a monarchical system of kings and queens, where the king's declaration is that 1 month or 1 year everybody eats fruit, and the next year everybody eats grain. Now, the reason for this is when the king sits down to his meal, when the Blizzard developers sit down to their meal, they're so used to eating the one style of gameplay over and over again that a slight variation from that always feels better than the old food that we're used to eating, the old meta that we're used to setting our world up around. The problem is that the entire economy gets built around those initial changes. People invest themselves in fruit. They invest themselves in a meta. They invest themselves in a character, and they learn how to develop everything as such, and that makes a healthy environment. But when the king comes in and declares that we're now moving over to grain, we're now moving over to a completely different way of playing Overwatch, all of that experience, all of that development, all of that community that went behind building something in that environment just gets thrown aside. Now, people die. Why? Because they die. They leave the game. Because they don't like grain. They're there for the fruit. They built their entire way of working with their environment inside fruit. Now, what's the big difference? Why people might go, well, that's just the way the gaming industry is. Well, it's not, unfortunately. It's the way the modern gaming industry works. In the old days, and even somewhat now in the nowadays, and I'm going to reference Counter-Strike as an excellent example of this. Of course, there's some controversy with Counter-Strike 2, but I believe that's just like Blizzard's, or we could say corporate America's bleeding into the culture of gaming. But there used to be a mindset that a game was just an engine, and when you release that engine to the people would make changes and add things. That's modding their game. Of course, with another generation, it was always seen as the developers were the best creators for that engine. They were the best people to build content for that engine. But they were always in competition with another group of people who didn't know that much about whatever game environment they were building in, but knew enough to create the games that they wanted to play. They knew enough to sustain the things and the ideas and the culture that they built around the initial game, which puts the official world, the official game design in competition with old game design. Now, part of what happens, and this is actually, I'm going a little bit abstract here, but we're going to use the fruits and grain analogy here. Well, in a fruit market, in a market in general, what's so useful about a market is that there's lots of options inside the market. There are tons of ways of interacting with the fruit market. And even in many ways, grain can be introduced to this fruit market, no problem. There's no big issue with bringing in other stuff. But what happens is when we start to introduce grain and we put grain all the way along the market so that we're only selling one thing, then we're actually taking advantage of everybody else that was there for fruit. The only reason why there is liquidity, and that's another word, we'll not go into this, but the only reason why there is liquidity is because the entire environment was set up around a previous culture. They're taking advantage of that liquidity, changing the market, and then really just sustaining out the people who are there for a while completely ignoring the fact that everybody else is now shuffling away. Of course, there will be a new group of people that come in and they go, wow, this is a big market. There's a lot of people around, not really realizing that the vast majority of vendors in that marketplace are starting to leave. Now, does this work? It does. It 100% works because you pretend that there's more people that are interested in your thing than actually is. That's Blizzard's mindset and mentality. That is a lot of these streamers and a lot of these content creators' mentality. Because at a certain point, you don't actually care about the game because it's your job. Now, of course, people care about the fun of the game. They start to care about the market. But the problem is the market isn't the thing that is fun. The market is not you don't just make a market. You have to have pieces of gameplay inside that market that allow people to come in and make that market liquid, basically allow for enough things to go on that when someone shows up to the marketplace, they have a whole bunch of things to do. Now, the problem with this too is over time, this variety that is supposed to be the thing that people like, they see all sorts of gameplay styles, eventually just becomes grain. Why? Because it's a declaration that everything must be grain, that the gameplay must be grain. We saw this happen in the original days of Overwatch, to the point where we have seen lots of other actual content creators, I'm going to critique that in just a second, leave the game because people didn't want them to play the game in the fun way that they were enjoying playing it. The entire Blizzard Overwatch system has hyper selected for a very small group of highly skilled players, which is one of the reasons why content creation in Overwatch is so terrible. Now, of course, we do want to learn how to get better. It's great that we have these people here that are really good at the game and they know how to play and we can go learn from them. Those people are there for a reason. You go to your local gym and you see somebody who's really fit, he's got a six-pack, and you ask him like, oh, you know, I would like to learn how to get a six-pack. That's totally fine. That's great and all. And that's where a lot of the community has focused in on. But we are an environment, or a game is an environment where we can have theater. Now, of course, being fit helps with theater. Being fit does help you do all sorts of movements on stage and helps you perform for longer periods of time. But the problem is they're not the best actors. We've individually selected for the way that people want Overwatch to be played. Personally, and I know this is a little bit of it's not a reason on my end, and it's a bit of a complaint. Personally, as somebody who's trying to make content for Overwatch, the amount of toxicity that comes from these gatekeepers of Overwatch content creation is just beyond me. There are so many times when I've messaged people, and of course, if you're a content creator watching this, feel free to send my message back. I may have not done the best job at communicating to you, but I've tried to reach out to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And really the answer 99% of the time is, what rank are you? And I'm like, I'm here to make YouTube videos. I'm here to make content for the game that I love in the way that I love this game. And the only focus of the vast majority of these people are really about your rank, because what happens when your rank is really high, you get a lot of views. So we mix up views for quality content. Lots of views happen because people are skilled. That is a good thing. I'm not going against it at all. And I want everybody to keep in mind, I do believe in many cases that Overwatch can be moving towards a much healthier game. But that is not my critique. That is not my issue at all. There is this level of ignorance and level of entitlement from even new players. This is what kills me also. Because we have hyper-selected for a community of people that really want the game played in one way, and they're the vast majority of views, which is larger than that of actual content creators, the entire focus of the game is now on how high up of a rank you are, and therefore the new people that come in only see the game in that light. So the response to your favorite hero being nerfed to the ground, your favorite gameplay style being nerfed to the ground is, get used to it, nerd! Get good! You're just bad at the video game! It doesn't really work that way, guys. It doesn't really work that way. The culture has shifted. Now, it's really interesting to see people on Twitter, accounts on Twitter that are very against cultural appropriation. They are pro diversity, and I'm pro diversity too. But they're not pro diversity inside Overwatch. We keep talking, and even the developers keep talking about making a game that is inviting to everybody, but they are not. They can't even create a company that's inviting to everybody. Inside their game, they can't even create a fun game, guys. They really can't. The only way they can make it fun is when they mix up the meta, when you throw a whole bunch of random people into a room and there is no culture anymore. Why? Because then the cultures are all bouncing off of each other. Now, keep in mind, I want you guys to point out that the culture that has fun is usually the culture that's stomping on other people. We need to admit, especially as a PvP game, we need to admit that a vast majority of Overwatch's fun comes from you sending someone back to spawn. It's a weird primal enjoyment. It's a weird thing that we do as human beings, where there's just like, it's just fun to win. It's just fun to win. And so what happens when you swap the meta up, you move a new group of people into this room of already existing people, and the winners are dominating everybody else. So they go, hey, this is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying myself. But then everybody else who's not having fun leaves. Or they switch over to the heroes and playstyles that focus on winning. Now we have both sides, where one side before was at a disadvantage because they weren't playing maximum meta, and other side was at an advantage because they were totally fine playing maximum meta. The old team gets rid of that old mentality. We bring in a new team. They're both playing maximum meta. Now both teams are not having fun anymore. The only reason why shaking up the meta all the time is good, and again, as a game, I'm somewhat pro shaking up the meta, but we really have to keep in mind that the only reason why that works is because someone gets screwed. Someone gets screwed. And every single time, even within Overwatch content creators, even within streamers, I want to point out, someone else has to get screwed. I've even seen arguments where, oh, I have 3,000 viewers until this other streamer gets on, and then I have 1,000 viewers, and then that streamer takes all of my viewers. Well, we're encouraging a competitive environment. If we compare a game to Minecraft, which I'm going to show the culture difference. We're not going to focus on the difference between the games, even though the game does allow for that cultural change in a way. The Minecraft community doesn't care how good you are at all. What they care is that you're passionate. What they care about is that you're telling a good story. What they care about is that you're working really hard, you're making things look nice, and you're making them inclusive for everybody. This has bred one of the largest content creation platforms on the internet. Content creation games on the internet. Minecraft, and also to some other games, I'm not going to go into those, quite a few other games out there have focused on this. So this is where people who make videos and people who make content have left to. The people who know actually how to have fun without destroying somebody else have all left. They're all gone. They are literally all gone. Now, it's very hard for me as somebody who sits right in between and deals with a lot of custom games and deals with players of all ranks to be able to talk about what is good and what is bad, and what is both good and bad for each other at the exact same time. I've been in conversations where someone goes, and actually with this recent patch, where someone goes, I really like the changes, and someone goes, this is the worst change I've ever seen in my entire life. Well, the problem is we have to articulate both of those, because both can be true, depending upon the environment that we're putting out there. And what should happen in that environment is those two mindsets can split up and can exist in the same tool set. Now, I will talk a little quickly about the disruption of that. We have seen in the workshop code or workshop systems a decrease in our ability to work on our own custom games. A pretty consistent decrease, and it is not good for us, especially too when we're trying to build our own little community, when we're doing free work to support Blizzard's setup, whatever they're doing. Now, it's also interesting, and because we're doing the survivor bias thing, we work on 6v6. The vast majority of creators are quite positive about 5v5. Why is that? Because all the 6v6 guys left. Because we had that group together, and they took advantage of the fact that all of those 6v6 lovers will play the first few 5v5 games. That gives them the environment and gives them the liquidity to build their game, but then just kicks out everybody else. And it's tyranny, right? It's the exact same thing as many, I'm not going to reference the exact cultural issues, but it's the exact same thing as the cultural issues we are seeing IRL, in real life. There is no doubt about that. The mindset and mentality that I went into an area and I'm having fun and everybody else around me is not having fun, but screw them because this is good for me, is such a core part of the human experience. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, it is being amplified inside Blizzard. I think it's rich kid syndrome. The young king has been born, and the young king has his way, and nobody else can question the young king. And that's just my opinion right here. I believe it breeds toxicity. I believe it breeds famine. A lot of people are starving in terms of the game that they love. But their fields that they used to sow are now being used for a different plant. and they can no longer work on those fields. And people are coming in, just learn to code, bro. Just learn to code, bro. Just learn the new health pools, bro. Just learn the new passes, bro. And that's never good. That is never good. I, for one, at the very end here, thank you guys for watching. I, for one, am very positive about these changes. I do think they are good for the health of the game, but they are not the same game that I used to play. These are not the same fields that I used to work on in Overwatch, and that resulted in the product that I loved. It's now something different. And can I still love it? Yes, I absolutely can. I'm totally okay with large changes, sweeping changes that make everything different. But as somebody, and you guys are going to hate this, that played a lot of Symmetra back in the day, I completely understand. I can completely, and Zarya too. Ryan Zarya, I'll just even point out, not just an abstract character, but Ryan Zarya being one of my favorite combos. The best combo that I played Overwatch for is gone. It's just gone. And people, unempathetic assholes who pretend to be empathetic, not gonna add, but pretend to be empathetic, keep telling me that that there's something wrong with me for liking the game that I liked. Guys, Overwatch community, you got to get your shit together. We need to split these things up. I'm going to say it over and over again. Private servers, private ladders, custom configs are the way to go with Overwatch to open this up and allow the community to build the games that they want to build. Mods, I remember seeing back in the day, even, I believe it was Kaplan, that was saying, oh, we're the company, we made StarCraft mods, we love mods and changes and everything. And then I'd seen another interview, they're like, well, you know, if we add this feature, we might as well add a map editor. And it's like, who the hell are these people to tell us that we shouldn't be running a map editor just because, who knows why? Because it crashes all the time. They say they can't release stuff that's underdeveloped for the average consumer. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. The real developers, the real people that love the game, they're going to continue loving the game, and they're going to continue building the culture that they want to build. But to abandon that culture, to use that culture, to take the things that the culture has built and designed and sell it to a whole new group of people, that marketplace, that's evil. That is where Blizzard is failing. That is where, at its fundamental as a company, clearly even the internals of Blizzard have destroyed the creativity and destroyed the dynamic nature and destroyed the inclusivity of Overwatch. Because I tell you guys, personally, I'm getting so damn sick of reaching out to people going, hey, well, I want to do some cool media, some cool work, and someone going, your rank is ass, screw off. It is, yes, this is a bit of a personal fight. Yes, this is a bit of a personal issue, but I know for sure, I know there's lots of people out there that have the exact same issue. They do not feel welcome in Overwatch. They do not feel like Overwatch is inclusive. Overwatch has become a game where you are either part of the in-group or you are nobody. That is not a good way of playing Overwatch. Thank you so much for watching. Please tell me down below, what are your issues with Overwatch? What problems have you come across? I know there's a lot of people that are going to complain about patch notes or changes, but I think from a social aspect, there's something wrong, and I would love you guys to share in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.